Thanks a lot for having me. I'm really excited to be in such great company this morning. Let's see. Should I be pressing this guy? Okay, great. I'm here to talk to you about the Rockefeller Foundation's work to support resilience in cities. And I'd like to start with an example. This is the Ukai Dam. It's governed by the state of Gujarat in India. Now, this dam was set up to provide water for farmers, but now, thanks to rainfall variability, the lack of predictability of rates of rainfall caused by climate change, the state of Gujarat periodically needs to conduct an emergency release. Now, what's below the dam? The city of Surat. Surat is the most flood-prone city in the state of Gujarat, with high vulnerability among the poor and among local industries. Now, the watershed near the dam has been so developed, so paved over, that rather than absorb the water just pours down and floods the city of Surat. And this is what happened in 2006. An emergency release from the Ukai Dam inundated 75% of the city, costing several hundred billion rupees. Now, why did this happen? There's the obvious ecological issues, but we believe there's no such thing as a natural disaster. There are natural events, but disasters are largely caused by us. They affect us. They can only be mitigated by us. Now, this is what we mean by socio-ecological resilience. The people are essential. It's the poorest people that are the most vulnerable to these kinds of disasters, and they're the only means by which we can mitigate these kinds of disasters. So, of the world's cities that contain the largest numbers of people that are exposed to the risks caused by climate change, 7 of the top 10 are in Asia. By 2050, it'll be about 9 out of the top 10. So the Rockefeller Foundation developed the Asian Cities Climate Change Resilience Network, or ACERN. Now, this is a network of key city stakeholders in 10 cities in 4 countries: Indonesia, India, Vietnam, and Thailand. The alliance was built to help cities understand, plan for, recover from, and even thrive in the changing environmental conditions caused by climate change. Now, we're sharing that learning with 40 other cities. So in Surat, we've supported the development of an end-to-end early warning system that will directly benefit the city population. Now, this is the first tenet of building socio-ecological resilience, improving the ability of various levels of a city to evaluate, learn, and adapt. The warning system will utilize a variety of communication channels from low-tech to high-tech. And this is the second tenet of building resilience: intentional redundancy. The communications networks, each is unique, but there are overlaps. There are people who listen to the radio as well as read SMS. There are people who read things online but answer their phones. But complementary to this intentional redundancy is modularity. Not only are we developing an end-to-end early warning system, but we're also influencing the bylaws in terms of developing new buildings in light of the fact that flooding will continue to happen. So this is a separateness between strategies, a communication strategy, but also a building strategy. Now, it's not just the poor that are advocating for these efforts. It's also local industries. Surat happens to be a huge manufacturer of saris. So what you have is also a cross-sector partnership between the city, the state, the community, and also the private sector through the industries. And this is the final means by which we build resilience in cities: partnerships that build community cohesion, but also formalize relationships to power. Now, what is resilience? It's quite simply the capacity of individuals, communities, and systems to survive, adapt, and grow in the face of stress and change. And by grow, we mean grow even stronger. It's not simply the return to a former state, but it's actually learning through a stress and a change to become a stronger system, to become a more cohesive system. Now, the term resilience derives from the ecological literature, from the understanding that preservation, adaptation, and survival of any one species is interdependent upon every other element of the environment, and resilience thinking requires that you look at various levels of a system, in this instance, of a city. Now, why is this a useful concept? It's more important than ever before, given the increasing number of shocks and volatilities that we'll face in the coming years, and this is largely because the world is more connected than it's ever been before. Now, this is value neutral. There's a lot of very good things about connectivity, and we don't have a position that connectivity needs to reduce. But with increased connectivity becomes the increasing snowballing of negative effects. The way that internet connectivity facilitates faster and denser trades across borders also enables the financial contagion that created the worldwide recession. Now, at the Rockefeller Foundation, we see resilience as a lens throughout to analyze problems and identify solutions. This is not exclusive to the climate change issue. We believe that every system with which we interact needs to become a more resilient system. Now, resilience concepts place a value on the deep knowledge of the intrinsic workings of local communities in designing interventions. As I mentioned yesterday, a resilience expert once said to me, if you want to find out if a community is becoming more resilient, you have to know what that community wants to become. An example of that is the Brownsville Partnership, started by the 2012 Jane Jacobs Medal winner Roseanne Haggerty, founder of Common Ground and Community Solutions. They spent years, Roseanne and all her partners, getting to know the community to find out what they wanted for themselves, for their children. Safety, education, a home. They're formalizing their model for collaborative community development, rooted in the concept of collective impact, that no one organization or project can transform a community, but that multiple stakeholders focused on common goals using transparent measurements of progress and working against a clear time frame can create profound change. Now, this is what I mean by smart redundancy. So over a dozen service providers, nonprofits, government agencies are developing shared indicators of impact on families for the sake of preventing homelessness. Now, this is the modularity. Now, not only these modular networks set up to reduce the tendency of crisis in one element of it to snowball across the whole system because they're separate organizations, they're separate agencies, but they have constant feedback loops. There's constant communication between them, so that this modularity is complemented by communication. During the past year alone, they've prevented evictions for hundreds of families. Now, all of these are strategies of partnerships, examples of partnerships, strengthening existing communities and bridging between networks for the sake of cohesion and access to power. Now, in closing, I'd like to talk about the role of social innovation in building resilience. Now, Jamaica Bay is one part of the larger Hudson River estuary and of the original Gateway National Park. Now, the Bay was basically a dumping ground for New York City for about a century. Now, we have the opportunity to learn how to restore a damaged urban ecosystem and maintain it in the face of climate change. Now, here at home, what's at risk? We're looking at probably about 2 feet of sea level rise by 2050. Now, who ultimately will this impact? We're talking about 900,000 residents right around here. That's about the size of the city of Atlanta in terms of the number of people that this will actually hit. And while cities generally here in the States are aging, you've got a critical mass of young folks. You have 10 percentage point higher of children in these communities. So, what are the global implications of this? Outside of these neighborhoods, this is an estuary. About 80% of coastal cities are actually on estuaries throughout the world. Mumbai, Lagos, Tianjin. If we can figure out how to recover an estuary, here in Jamaica Bay, we can figure this out globally. Now, this area is governed by the national park system, the federal government. They have the legal ability to intervene in the system itself. They can actually restore an estuary in the way that the rest of us can't, the way the state can't, the way the city can't. But they don't have a stake in making this a community amenity. They're not boots on the ground. The city has a stake in this being a community amenity. And the Rockefeller Foundation has a stake in making this an educational resource for the community so that the community becomes more resilient. Now, we're also negotiating a partnership between the Environmental Defense Fund, the Van Allen Institute, and other local partners to do a similar project in the lower Mississippi River and the Gulf Coast. This will allow us to continue to make our most vulnerable residents safer, stronger, smarter, and more resilient here in New York City, but also throughout the nation and throughout the world. Thank you.